This episode is brought to you by Fairdesk, a crypto derivatives trading platform founded by 6 former Binance execs and 3 former Morgan Stanley architects. Fairdesk is a company focused on building a platform that enables traders to profit from both rising and falling markets. Sign up today and CB will credit you up to $600 in trading funds. For more information, visit fairdesk.com, link in the description below.
My dissertation at Berkeley was a blockchain, and that was from '82, and you can see it on my website. And there's an article that shows that basically had all the blockchain elements except the proof of work. But there's a couple other ingredients that are needed as well, and one is untraceable payments. And there are different ways to implement it, but the original way, with the blind signature way, was really pretty good, which we implemented in the mid-'80s. We issued our own currency then that was called Cyberbucks. And that you go to Chaum.com and the eCash/eCash, you can see the whole museum there with all the press releases. There's like 100 shops that accepted our Cyberbucks. Tor used the same route back and forth with variable sized packets. It's a joke. There's no anonymity provided. It's just a honeypot. But so mixing is an essential ingredient in unlinking you from your transactions, sort of hiding your IP address, if you will.
If you want to see more videos and interviews like this from influential people in tech, finance, and sports, subscribe to the channel and make sure you hit the bell to be alerted. And go a step further and join the YouTube membership area for early releases of videos like this. I'm out of here.
Welcome to the show, everybody. It's Amina Motala here, and I have a very special guest here today. And by chance, I was able to meet this wonderful gentleman in the lobby of my hotel when I was at the Consensus Conference in Austin, Texas, just recently, well, about a month ago. And a friend of mine, Mama Crypto, told me, you've got to meet this man, Amina. He is the pioneer. He is the one who started it all. And I said, well, please introduce me. So we are connected, and here I am today, but let me please do a little introduction. So I have here with me today, David Chaum, PhD in computer science from UC Berkeley and former professor at NYU Graduate School of Business and University of California. David is the founder of the International Association for Cryptologic Research, the cryptography group at the Center for Mathematics and Computer Science in Amsterdam and DigiCash. And he's known for the developing eCash, an electronic cash application that aims to preserve a user's anonymity, and inventing many cryptographic protocols like the blind signature mixed networks and Dunning cryptographer's protocol. In 1995, his company DigiCash created the first digital currency with eCash. His 1981 paper, Untraceable Electronic Mail, Return Addresses and Digital Pseudonyms, laid the groundwork for the field of anonymous communication research. I mean, it's such a pleasure to have you here today, David. And I really didn't know. And now that I understand what part you have in all of this in your mind, the co-creation of what we are doing here and the significance of it. And it's just such an honor to have you here today. So welcome.
Thanks so much. It's a pleasure. I'm glad to be here. Yeah, it was kind of coincidental meeting in the lobby, as you mentioned there, because I think you were just passing through. Wasn't really in a sort of in-between lobby between 2 hotels or something. Yeah, so great. Yeah, so
tell us more about yourself.
Well, I mean, let me say a few things that I think would be perhaps of most interest to you on the things I have maybe said before, but I think they're worth repeating. And one thing is that actually it was in 1979 that I first published as a technical report this mixing technology, and it remains to this day. I mean, it appeared in a journal in 82, I think, and it's had like 6,500 references, technical references since then, which is a lot. And it remains to this day the only real way to protect the metadata, who talks to who and when. So, you have what's in the envelope, that's the message content, and what's written on the outside, who it came from, who it's going to, how much it weighs, that sort of thing, where they are, that's the metadata. And it turns out that the spies have always realized the metadata was much more useful than just to read what's in there, because what's in there could be in code, it could be misleading, but the metadata is revealing about the whole social graph, who knows who and who contacts who after and before which events and so on. It's what the CIA said under sworn testimony was what they used to take over Chile, for example. And it's what Snowden has now finally come around to saying that's it's the whole game, the metadata. And I realized this in before the web, right, in '79. That's early days, but basically that the only way to protect your own information, like to give yourself privacy, to have control over the maintenance and use of information about yourself, is for you to exclusively have the keys to control it. That's the only real effective way to have privacy in an informational world, because otherwise other people have those keys and you're never sure if they leak that information or are saving it or what's really happening to it. And that's that was prescient, because today 3/4 of people on the planet apparently, or that responded to surveys anyways, believe that privacy is the main thing that's wrong with computers and the internet today. Mm-hmm. And that's what the surveys show. So the public has come around to realizing that if they trust others to have this information, they will, those others will exploit it, maybe use it to manipulate you, to feed you false information, to make money off it, and basically dehumanize you in some sense. So mm-hmm. What I did was I open sourced that technology at that time, and since then it's been written and implemented by lots of different groups, and Mixmaster and Minion and so on, and then eventually which is a U.S. government. Don't make no mistake, that's sponsored by the intelligence community, no matter what they say. I know a lot of people that were behind it. It's like, that's not what it seems to be. That's a honeypot, right? But right, yeah. That's not mixing. Mixing, you don't just have 3 hops. That's not enough. You got to have more hops, and you got to be a little more careful than that. So, and you can't, Tor use the same route back and forth with variable size packets. It's a joke. There's no anonymity provided. It's just a honeypot. Mm-hmm. But so mixing is an essential ingredient in unlinking you from your transactions, sort of hiding your IP address, if you will. That's right. How, yeah. But there's a couple other ingredients that are needed as well. And one is, let's say, untraceable payments. And there are different ways to implement it, but I'm still like the original way, with the blind signature way, was really pretty good, which we implemented in the mid 80s. And we issued our own currency then that was called Cyberbucks. And that you go to Chaum.com and the eCash/eCash, you can see the whole museum there with all the press releases, and mm-hmm. There's like 100 shops that accepted our Cyberbucks, and you can see some of their web pages from the Wayback Machine by clicking on their logo. So, but it was also issued by Deutsche Bank in the Deutschmarks in those days, right? And it was in US dollars by Mark Twain Bank, and Australian dollars by Vance Bank, and then Nomura was using it. All their employees could use it, and so on. It was quite real at that time. But then that kind of like the .com boom kind of tapered out, and it didn't really survive that. It's sad, but it's not a blockchain. I had my dissertation at Berkeley was a blockchain, and that was from the 82, and you can see it on my website. And there's an article that shows that basically had all the blockchain elements except the proof of work. The proof of work. Right. Yeah, it wasn't in there, but that was developed by Noor and. Is it Satoshi Nakamoto? No, the proof of work was developed by Noor and I forgot her name. I'm not yeah, sure. I'm sorry. She worked at IBM with Moni. Anyways, they published it. They presented it at a crypto conference about 4 years before. Okay. It was rediscovered by people who said, "Oh, we've invented it for blockchain," but all they did was take what was already presented. Right. I was there when they presented it. It was presented at a conference that I founded. So there's something called another piece of the story is that also because I realized how important owning your own keys was going to be in the future. In the early 80s, 81, the National Security Agency in the United States was saying that if you had a conference on cryptography, they would put you in jail. Basically, that
Wow.
research in cryptography could be born classified like nuclear secrets. You'd
Mhm.
have to get them from the government. If you could create it yourself, it's still classified. And so that, I just felt that couldn't stand. So I did what any real Berkeley graduate student would have done at that time, and I organized a conference on cryptography. And that kind of set cryptography free, so I
Right.
spent the rest of my life in jail. But anyways,
You did go to jail for that.
I did not.
Oh,
No, I
sorry, you
couldn't.
did not. Okay.
I did not. They said they were going to throw the
Yeah.
book at people and everything, but they didn't, because the way I did it, I didn't use any electronic means to organize it. I did it all by in-person arrangements and set up the foundation of the International Association and the next event. So when I stood up there and announced that that everyone in attendance was a member of the new International Association, by paying their fees, that were paying their dues. And that's when all the people in the front row who were pretending to be private citizens, but actually all mysteriously lived in Laurel, Maryland, according to how they registered, turned green, because it was over. That it became an international scientific organization, and that's the kind of thing that was protected by the UN, and it's kind of really hard to move against. And then we had also announced at that same time, the successor event, which was going to be in Udine, Italy, and so forth. And so it was kind of over, and they realized it. So they were, so that was
Good.
And then,
thank you for that.
yeah, I mean, it's like, when I think back about it, I wasn't really scared. I just felt that's what I was going to do.
Yeah.
And I used security technology, spy tradecraft to do it. We stuffed the envelopes from the printouts, we cut out, and we went to where the free press was printed, and they printed the invitations for us secretly. And, the whole thing was done clandestinely, so that we had we couldn't have, I guess, stopped. We had the element of surprise. And I think that, there's a message there. Like, if you don't have those kind of means available to you today, now they have to be in electronic form.
Right.
You can't really do anything that you might not want to be caught having done. And
this is
been really contemplated, and I think that kind of issue is going to come more to the fore for ordinary people in the coming months, because democracy might very well be in some mortal danger, and I think there's a lot of stuff's coming to a head, in this election.
Absolutely. I'm up in Canada, and they're talking about bringing in the digital ID this fall, and even our voting.
Yeah. So anyway, so that's another aspect. And then, but there's also the final thing is what I call the credential mechanism. So just to put stuff out on the table, I published this article variously in scientific journals that appeared, and then it appeared by invitation in Scientific American, and it shows how if you have this untraceable communication and untraceable money, like with so the blind signature eCash, then all you need is one more thing to kind of allow you to control all the information about yourself, and that's what I call the credential mechanism. And that basically, so instead, you can think of this, the current paradigm, right? The obvious paradigm is that every company you interact with, every website, every whatever government agency, you have to identify yourself to them and authenticate yourself, right?
Totally.
And so all that information can be linked. People are sometimes surprised when they see ads pop up here for something they did there, and that completes your ability to control all the information about yourself in an electronic world. And I call that third thing a credential mechanism. So that there were articles that appeared in the scientific journals, and then I was invited to put them in the Scientific American in the mid 80s. You can see it on my website, Achieving Electronic Privacy. And it explained all this. So the credential mechanism is best understood as a different paradigm for information that's held about you. So the current paradigm is just the obvious thing. Each company, or website, or government agency that you have a relationship with probably knows some identifying information about you, and they have data about you. And so they could all work together to link it together and find out like the complete database about you. That's why you sometimes see surprising little things pop up from places you didn't expect it, because it's potentially all linked together. It's outside of your control, and this is something, it's not good. So the other paradigm, the new paradigm that I proposed, is where using credentials is where you interact with each different entity under a different, what I call the digital pseudonym. It's a different public key, it's different. So you don't reveal your identity to each one of these entities. You reveal a public key, just like, to Ethereum wallet. I mean, you have that key, you're the owner of that wallet. You have a different key for each wallet, that you have a different key for each entity, so you can prove it's really you without revealing your identity. And then they can say things about you by signing your public key in a credential mechanism with different kinds of signatures to indicate different attributes, things they want to say about you, like, okay, paid insurance in 1989, has this much money in the bank, doesn't do this, whatever, I graduated from college, this, that, the other, and so on, different, whatever it is, is one of our best customers, whatever it is. And then you have all those signatures, and then if one of your organization you're dealing with says, well, in order to come into our event, you have to be at least 18, you have to this, that, you can't, whatever, and do you meet our criteria? And you say, yes, I do. And they say, okay, great. Thank you for sending the answer and the zero knowledge proof that it's true. You have the signatures to back that up, but without revealing anything about those, except that they are enough to make your answer of yes, I do be proven to be correct. So you keep all the information about yourself exclusively, and yet they get much higher quality because they get proven answers to their queries, but you get to decide whether to answer the queries. So
how is that different than the digital ID? Or this digital ID that our government...
Anything that has ID in it is about the first paradigm.
Right.
I think if this is about digital pseudonyms, right? It's like, there is no ID.
Well,
right?
that's
single identifier. It's
right.
Use a different. It's the differences. I guess you're asking use a different identifier with each.
And entity. I want to make that clear because I have newbies that are watching here. So that's a very distinctive fact, because a lot of people think, oh, you're in cryptocurrencies or this digital world and it's run by evil and all these sorts of things you said. But
okay. I don't know if we're going to be able to straighten the whole world out with this podcast, but I hear you. Yeah, if you try to restate it, make it sort of more tangible and memorable. Yeah, it would be like you move to a new country, and instead of always having to tell them your real name, you told each different, your insurance, your bank, your internet provider, this, that, and the other. You took each one and you gave them a different name, totally different name, a random looking name.
Right.
And that was okay because you had a way to then show them that you have received support from other companies or government about that. You have like a version of a passport with that name in it, a version of a bank book with that name in it, and so on. And you can kind of prove to them that you have good standing and so on. And then they can, in turn, give you some maybe statements of goodness, like, okay, you've got car insurance in our country until the end of this year, and then. And then if you get stopped by the police, they say, "Ooh, let me see all your papers." No, you don't. No, that's not what they do in that country. They just say, "Oh, we just need you to tell us, do you have insurance and a driver's license, and do you own this car?" And then you say, "Yes, it's all true." And here's the digital proof of that. But that is a zero knowledge proof. There's no details in that. They learn nothing more than that the answer is true, and you have
verified
signatures to back that up completely that are based on pseudonyms of yours. So they can't see how those pseudonyms are linked, but they know that you have signatures on your pseudonyms that support that assertion fully. It's the same. You can say, okay, I prove that I paid my taxes correctly, or that you can even do that. So that's a credential mechanism. So we have untraceable communication, which just means that, no one can collect the metadata. No one sees who you're talking to and when. Right? That's the mixing. And you have you have to be able to, when you're using the mixing, when you're using this untraceable communication, you have to be able to pay for things. And if you're a journalist or something, you have to be paid for information. So those two things are necessary for democracy, because without them, you cannot meaningfully participate in democracy.
Correct. Yeah.
You need a protected sphere to develop your opinions, communicate with your friends and family and so forth, to really meaningfully be a citizen. And then the credential mechanism is like completes the picture, because it allows you then to interact with the rest of the organizational landscape also in a protected manner. But let me just add that that's not to say that there aren't circumstances, sorry for the double negative, but it may be that you, when you walk down the street, there are Internet of Things cameras and whatever that figure out who you are and trace you and so on.
Right.
So I'm not proposing an ideal as necessary at all. What I'm saying is there is something that we can do right now, because we are doing it at Execs Network. We have untraceable messaging, and we will have untraceable payments.
And Execs Network is your company. I just want to make that clear.
Well, I founded it. It's a project, and we
Right.
have, the foundation is running it now. But I put a lot of my ideas into it initially, and put the team together. And so, Execs Network allows you to use, the Elixir Messenger to communicate without. It's the only messenger that protects your metadata. You don't upload your contacts. Everything stays in your phone. Every message goes through 5 mixed nodes on the way to its delivery, and those 5 are chosen randomly every half second or third of a second now. There's like 500 nodes around the world that are running on the protocol, and randomly 5 of them are chosen every third of a second. Your messages go through those, and so no one can tell who's talking to who and when. So that even if they could read all the traffic on the internet, which NSA said they could do, that's what Stone told us, right? The full take. They never denied that they had the full take. So the only way to protect the metadata against someone with a full take is mixing. But no other messenger even protects it against high school students, and in fact, people think the metadata is protected like as a matter of law, but it isn't generally. That's a weird thing about metadata. In the US, like any government agency could ask for a mail cover on you, and then your postman would write down all the addresses on all the envelopes you received and sent, and the weights of them, and so on. Same with the phone company. There's what's called a pen register. This could be requested, and then the phone company has to turn over all the numbers that you called and they called you and how long you talked. No warrants are needed for that. That's an administrative thing, and the public doesn't realize that. But similarly, traffic data, like who you talk to and when, is not very well hidden on the internet. So just by listening in near another messenger service, not ours, you could very easily reverse engineer which IP addresses are talking to which, and then you can figure out very easily, because of public records about which phones are where. Usually you link it all together and then start linking it to everything else. So it's people say there was something called the encryption wars, where the National Security Agency says, the keys can only be so long and you can't export them and all this, and all these advocacy groups were fighting this and fighting it, and there was all this. I stayed completely out of that, right? Because I worked in privacy technology, the stuff I'm talking about. But there was a whole decades-long struggle along those lines. And I think it basically, the net effect of it was simply that the government won, because they got everyone to focus on what's in the envelopes as the big thing. But that's a misdirection.
Right.
They've always been much more interested in what's on the envelopes. And so, if you read Zuckerberg's privacy, articles, like one that's like 3,500 words long, and there was
pretty long.
A recent one. I mean, it's all he talks about: strong end-to-end encryption. That's what's in the envelopes, and all the messages are, move over to ours because we have strong end-to-end encryption. Well, I'll tell you something, that one thing that recently brought that home to me and proved that's all just a straight up lie, is because Execs Messenger months ago it's in a lot of media, large consumer media, widely announced that we have now quantum resistant end-to-end encryption. And the U.S. government has mandated all the VPN stuff should have quantum resistance, because you see. Okay, why is that important? You don't have to be like a tinfoil hat fan to think that quantum resistance is needed to protect what's in the envelopes. And the reason is because, no one doubts that quantum computers will eventually work. Now, maybe, they already work in government labs or not, we don't know. And no one doubts that they will work relatively soon, and there's a debate about that, when exactly, and so on. And you could try to read between the lines on that stuff. But in any event, if someone saves all the data, which the NSA says they do, or they didn't deny they didn't do it, and Stone said they do, then whenever they get those quantum computers, they'll be able to go back and read all of what you said. Mm-hmm. So that's why the U.S. government has told all of its agencies, not that's not even for classified, that's just the public agencies, that they have to use quantum resistant for all their traffic, because someone could then later read it, or maybe they can read it now. Maybe they know that the Chinese already have it. I don't know, but you don't have to, you don't have to believe in quantum computers can break cryptography today to think that it's much better to use quantum resistant end-to-end encryption as soon as possible, because everything that, only until you start doing that will all of your, is all of your traffic protected. Otherwise, until you do start doing it, it's all readable in future. Right. Yeah, retroactively. So, and that's kind of the worst kind of intelligence. When someone later finds out that they're interested in you, and then they can go back and look at what you said 2 years ago. I mean, it's not what you want.
Exactly, yeah.
So, who knows what they're going to infer from it. So that's.
So do you see us having, I'm sorry, I'm having some technical issues here with my camera, and I've never had this before.
I noticed it.
I'm like in and out, and it's very bizarre.
2018, I announced the Execs network project at, I think it was Consensus in Singapore. Mm-hmm. And I said that what's needed, and you can see these videos and stuff, but what's needed is essentially WeChat with privacy inside. So that would be private messaging and private payments. So that's what people want. And they want it integrated. And if you know about WeChat in China, it has mini apps in it that are in a little sandbox there. And, those are lightweight apps that you can access from within WeChat to do sort of common things. And so now the Execs messenger not only has quantum resistant end-to-end encryption and the metadata shredding, unlike any other, no messenger has either one, but now we've created an open platform, and we announced it in Austin actually, for anyone who wants to develop what we call them mini apps, privacy mini apps. And so what it amounts to is, and I could, you can read about it. Basically, when you're using our messenger on it, you download on the App Store, right, Android or iOS, there will be a mini app page, and it will allow you to, it's like an app store. You can see there's 7 categories of these mini apps, and there's about 20 of them that the foundation has put out, like fairly generous rewards and support for people to build them in various stages. When you click on these little icons for them, it will download them from the App Store and install them and link them to your app. So they'll act like they're within your Messenger app. There'll be little icons, and you click on them, and they can do things like, so one of the things is, a very simple one is private search. So, when you search for something online, then you might later get a lot of ads about that thing. And that could even get you in trouble if other people see those ads, later, and so forth. So, and a lot of times just don't, you don't really want to be associated with whatever it is you're searching for. You just want to search for it. And so this just allows you to type in a search query and get the answer back over Execs network, and no one will ever know who requested that search, but you'll see the answer. That's like private search, a very simple mini app. But there's another one that's like a little more elaborate, but we've received a lot of interest. We call it private help, shielded help, where it allows you, say you have some health or reproductive rights or legal issue or something, and you want to get professional help. That's what it really comes down to. It's really, you want to be a whistleblower, you really shouldn't just start out doing stuff till you find out what the deal is with it. And generally this is true. And so we have like news for these different, these different categories. And then you can connect anonymously with a actual helps line, and so forth. So that's the shielded help mini app. And there's 18 other mini apps. So one of them is, I could go through them, but they're in 7 categories. Some of them are, social networking things that'll with private for users of Execs network. Others allow you to look at what's happening in your legacy, like your old social media accounts. You can sort of anonymously kind of participate in groups and stuff like that, or see what's going on. And
what's your website that people can go and
Execs network, Execs.network. Yeah, Execs.network.
Okay.
That's owned by the foundation, but that's where but for the Elixir, for the mini apps in the Elixir, that's at Elixir. That will be at elixir.io shortly.
Okay. All right.
But right now it's at Execs Messenger. So we're just kind of separating the foundation stuff fully from the rest, because we're going totally decentralized. So so that's the mini app privacy platform. I don't think there's ever been any kind of thing like it. But I think also it seems to resonate with people, and it seems like it provide a lot of value, and it's open, so anyone can think of a new privacy mini app, they can make it, and so on, and they can apply to get it backed by the foundation. So but we have 20 that are fully detailed out, and it also includes private payments and stuff like that with the where it's integrated with the messenger. So you use the special messages that show when you've received or asked for payments and so on, and you use the authentication that's already set up, because we have strong authentication between the users of the messenger, so that's used to make sure that the money goes to the right wallet IDs and all that.
Brilliant.
Yeah, it's pretty sweet. So we're really enthusiastic about it. But I think it's worth just back to the sort of bigger issue of, let's say, the new Cold War between the U.S. and the West and China, that some people are, seem to feel like is already underway or needs to be instigated or whatever. In the West, I've said publicly, I'm not a big fan of that. I think it's a little bit, but that's, I guess, neither here nor there. The real interesting thing is that it's a sort of objective fact. The only real fundamental difference between the kind of, let's say, authoritarian life under an authoritarian regime in China, and digital life as part of so let's say, liberal democracy with human rights, like in the West, the only difference between those two informational lives is whether your messages are traced by the government or not.
So true.
And so what I'm telling you is that unless you're using Execs Messenger, your messages are easily traceable by government today in the U.S. You may think not, but that's just because they fooled you into looking in the wrong place.
Right, as they always do, yeah.
Yeah, so it's like, okay, but so we can do that. So we provide this protected sphere, and it will include payments, right? So that's what, in my opinion, I could argue this is, I believe, necessary for democracy. That's kind of like what I was saying. So if a government can't get its head around, can't agree with allowing its citizens to participate in a protected sphere for messaging and payments, then it's precluding their role as citizens, right? So, as you said, you compare that with China, the real only difference is people there are like, okay, we know the governments can get all the, Alipay information and all the WeChat information. And so we just know that and we live with it. But that's the big difference. That's where the rubber meets the road. That's the real fundamental difference. That's where the ethos, this alleged fundamental philosophical distance, where it really is manifest. And so the privacy of individual communication and payments is like a defining characteristic of this differentiation basis of this Cold War. Yeah, it's
what you're saying.
It's quite something. So a lot of countries are talking about having what they call central bank digital currency, and if they don't put the privacy in there, then that can undo the privacy that you would have within a messenger, right? Because that would link, the payments would link things if they weren't linked by the metadata of the messaging.
What can we do? I mean, to see us having a dictatorship or a real democracy, I mean, what can the people we need to do something.
Well, look, let me put it this way. The first step would be to use Execs Messenger, because if you're not doing that and you have any sense of what's really going on, you'll realize that whatever you talk about doing or think about doing, or the people you talk to about doing, whatever, that's might come back and harm you, and that's going to chill your any kind of activity that you might have, in fact, typically. So really, it sounds I'm not trying to talk my own book here, but I'm just saying it's obvious to be, putting together what I'm saying here, one should, use Execs Messenger as a first step, and there in that
for communication
place, and payment. You certainly have to pay for information or pay people related to things that you're doing, but and then from there you will feel safe to explore possibilities and participate in discussion and see what to do. But if you don't do that, so just look at the Arab Spring and all this stuff. I mean, those events had exactly the opposite effect on the participants and on society than was intended by the participants. If you just look into it a little bit, you'll see that, like, Telegram was compromised in a way that allowed those countries to actually persecute the leaders of all the movements. And look what then you get, it's now way worse than it was before the Arab Spring. And I think that's true for almost all the countries of the Arab Spring. I don't really understand all the ins and outs of Tunisia. That's a little more complicated. That's above my pay grade. But but generally speaking, if you think that social media is a great medium to organize or explore your personal political views or have really meaningful discussion, you're not very well informed.
Correct.
But if you are well informed and you don't know that there's an alternative, then your activities would be chilled. So that's what I think.
Well, thank you for that. I really find this very insightful. Question, your thoughts of Bitcoin and the future?
Well, far be it from me. I mean, I'm such a fan of what Bitcoin has done as far as bringing to the fore an appreciation of the fact that things can exist outside of government structures and still be like innovative and good. That's a huge sea change in my view. That's kind of critical, and it's sort of engendered this whole ecosystem that I think we're involved in, and which is a fantastic, not only fun and profitable or whatever thing, it's a very important thing. I mean, if you leave things to governments, you're not likely going to get something that routes around them, right, or whatever. You're going to, sort of obvious, isn't it, that the way,
That's right, What are your thoughts of Ethereum?
Well, I don't want to malign the project, but I have said publicly that, I did sit in on some early planning meetings for Ethereum 2.0, sort of inner circle meetings. Maybe I was an interloper, but I was invited, I guess maybe because I don't know, I was there, happily admitted, and I was just listening in, and I was like, these people are never going to be able to do this. That's what I thought to myself. Honestly, I said, I better get back into this whole stuff because they need help. That's honestly, that's true. So, but I mean,
Okay. That's fair. That's fair. I won't keep asking you on the other.
No, I mean, I'm not in the business of prognosticating about.
No, I understand.
But it's like such a fan of the whole
ecosystem
and the ecosystem, the community, and so many well-intentioned people, and also it's just the fundamental significance and importance of all this.
Yeah, exactly. Very important. Very pivotal part in our history and in our life.
I think so. Yeah, it is, and we got to make it happen. It's not done yet. So
it's not done yet. No, that's for sure. Anything else you want to add? I mean, I could ask you, I know we have another meeting after this, but I can keep asking you. Maybe we can have you back on another time. I'd
love to chat with you another time. Yeah, this was super great. It was a real pleasure.
Such a pleasure. So definitely everyone get to Execs Network and .com, correct?
No, just execs.network.
.network. Oh, brilliant. Okay, yes.
Yeah.
And I'll have it posted, of course. So.
Yeah, check out Chaum.com too, and keep your eyes open because some new stuff coming in pretty soon. And watch the space.
I'm very excited. I want to learn so much more. Well, thank you so much, David. I really appreciate having you here today, and I'll definitely have you back if you're willing.
Okay, I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah.
I mean, it was super great. All right, have a wonderful day.
You as well.